A brand new series called The Symphony of God's Plan. And there's many different stories in our world and around us, but there's one composer, and God specializes in taking all of these stories and weaving them together and creating this symphony as He talks with us and walks with us. And so we're going to be sharing different stories with you each week or every so often throughout this series. And today, we have a very special story that we would like to share with you and a special friend. And so would you guys help me in welcoming Miss Mary Lou as she comes on stage here today? Very good. Thank you so much for coming up and being willing to share your story with us. And I've had the opportunity to hear it a couple times, and it continues just to bless my heart as well. And like I said, this is Mary Lou, and her husband Dave is here as well. And they're special people to us here at the Bridge Church, and we are so thankful that God connected us and connected our paths together, and we get to walk together in this journey. And so, but Mary Lou, you carried something that was really heavy for a really long time in your life, and it's been woven into your story for many, many years. And would you take a moment just to introduce yourself, but also just tell us a little bit about your life and what brought you here today?
I grew up in a happy home with 2 parents and 2 sisters. We were lacking in nothing. We had a joyful life. When I went to school, I made good grades, I had friends, I participated in activities, and everything was fine. When I was an 8th grader in 1965, I met David, who was a freshman, and we have been together ever since. We will have been married 55 years in August. And we got married, both finished our college degrees, had 2 beautiful sons who are now upstanding young men that we're very proud of. But in 1976, my life was totally turned upside down. I suddenly was crying all the time. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to see people. I just wanted to be in this enclosed environment. We didn't know what was wrong. David would go to school. He would teach all day. He would coach, come home and be father and mother and caregiver, and anything he had to do, he did, because I was totally incapacitated. I could do absolutely nothing. We finally got a diagnosis of treatment-resistant clinical depression. Back then, Prozac was basically the only medication available, and you didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about a mental illness. It was something that you kept to yourself. Over the next 50 years, I had been in and out of hospitals. I even went to Kansas was supposedly the treatment place to go. It didn't work. I was on about every medication that came out. I had ECT treatments, which totally took away some long-term memory that I now cannot remember my children growing up. I attempted suicide more than once. In 2002, I got what you call a vagal nerve stimulator. It's inserted right here, and there's wires that go to my brain, and when it fires, it increases those chemicals that I'm apparently lacking. And so I had that inserted. It has helped. I continue to use it today, but it wasn't a cure by any way. Today, There are a lot more medications out there, a lot more treatments out there, new things happening all the time for depression. But it's still a mental illness. It's talked about a little more now than then, but there's still a stigma attached to it. When we moved here, we were lucky enough to live next to Rich and Lisa Allison, who invited us to come to the Bridge Church, which we did. And we enjoyed it and kept coming back. Although there were times I could not come, I could not get out of bed. There were times I came and had to leave in the middle of the service because I was crying. But over 50 years, you become very adept in wearing the happy mask. And many times I would be here and everyone would think everything's fine when inside I was dying. But you do what you have to do. We started going to a small group, which became my safe haven. They knew from the beginning what I was dealing with, and they have always been very supportive for me.
Mine went out. Sorry about that, guys. So thank you for sharing that. I know that's a heavy thing to carry for you as well. And but as you were walking through this, you joined a small group, and here recently something changed. Can you walk us through what changed, what that experience was like?
I'll never forget it. It was at Mark and Jean Egan's, and we're having our small group. It was April 24th. And it was one of those times when, everyone was talking about how great God was, how much he loved everybody, and how much he cared, and how much he helped everybody, and on and on and on. And I could just feel myself inside just tightening up. And when it came time for prayer, the dam was loose. And I let out everything that I had been feeling. I could not understand how God would allow David and I and our family to go through 50 years of hell. I couldn't wrap my head around it. This loving God would allow this. I came to even doubt that there was a God. I mean, I was seeing no effect of his presence. And if there was a God, I was very angry. I was mad. I was so tired of all of this. So after I let everything out, our small group gathered around me and prayed for me. And I went home crying that night, cried myself to bed. And I prayed, which was probably the first time I'd prayed in a very long time. And I laid it all out before God, what I had laid out before the small group. My not understanding, my disbelief, my anger. And I asked forgiveness for all those things. And I told him that I didn't know how many more years I had left on this earth. But if he could lift my depression just enough that I could enjoy life that I hadn't for the last 50 years of my life. And I asked for rest and peace. I've never been a good sleeper, and I probably slept the best that night that I had ever slept. I woke up the next morning. I was not dreading the day ahead. And basically for 50 years, that's what I did. Another day, I have to go through this. I saw the sun the sun's always been there, but finally I saw it. And I, overnight, had become happy. I dusted off my Bible and found an old devotional book I had. And that morning I started a daily devotion and prayer time that I've kept to this day.
Thank you for sharing that. When I just think about your story, and I remember getting the text after April 24th, and just we had met a couple of times before that, and just heard your story and what you've been through, and then just seeing the shift even on the text. I got to tell you this story. I got to tell you what God has done in my life, and so hearing that, just even feeling emotional on your back porch in the screened in, just seeing how God was moving in that, and but I love for you in your heart to say, okay, I'm taking the mask off. Here's everything. You just gave it to your small group, and then you gave it all to God too. Here's everything I'm thinking. Here's my feet, all of that, God. I'm laying it at your feet, and your small group. I loved their attitude and their posture. They said, we're not going to get around and lecture, and here's all the different answers. Let's pray for you. Let's get around you, and let's call on the name of the Lord, and let's pray for you. And they prayed over you and through that as well. And so it's amazing to see through all of that God was working and lifted that, because you can even share here what your life has been like after that day and after that experience, because it's not all gone, and you still have struggles and still walking through battles. But tell us a little bit about that now after April 24th.
It's not been easy. I will always have some level of depression because mine is a chemical imbalance. But Satan went to work on me immediately. He bombarded me in every aspect. I suddenly was having health issues I hadn't had. I tell people that he knew what buttons to push. He knew what things, maybe attitudes that I had for 50 years, which aren't easy to get rid of. And he kind of dwell on that and push me in that direction, like being short to anger or being impatient or, various things. But I now had God. Before, I'd head in that direction and it would just keep going. I've asked God to help me in every step of the way. I pray constantly because, I know when I'm headed south. And so, I'm constantly asking God, let's just take this one step at a time. That's all I can handle right now, one step at a time. And I do want to tell you two things. Back during the 50 years, two things happened that at the time I didn't think much about, but I do now. One was that for 8 years, I was director of the food pantry at the church we were going to at that time. I couldn't have done that on my own. God had to be working through me. There were times I couldn't go and my assistant would have to take over. But basically, I did it. I planned it and I did it. I didn't do it. I couldn't have done it. And the other thing is, in 2008, I wrote a book. Where did that come from? It's called Why Is Mommy Crying? And I have felt a lot of distress that my young boys had to go through what they did with me. And I thought if I could help one child maybe understand a little bit better. I know they totally can't understand, but if it would give them a little bit of hope that their mommy or daddy or whatever could be happy again, which at the time I didn't know if that was even possible, because this was right in the midst of when I was so depressed. Again, it was a God thing. There was no way I did this by myself. David was taken for granted for 50 years. I knew he wasn't going to leave. I knew he would always be there. I knew he would take care of anything that needed to be taken care of. He supported me in every way, shape, or form. So since April 24th, I'm trying very hard to be the wife that he should have had for 50 years. Be more loving and kind and supportive to him than I was. He's been through a lot, but he's a good man, and I know that God put him in my life because God knew what our lives were going to be like, and he knew David would stick it out with me. I had no hope for 50 years, but when I let go and let God, I found that hope. I might end by saying that I went to bed April 24th a broken person, and I woke up the next morning a new creation.
That is so good. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there any words of encouragement for anybody listening that you would like to give to them as we wrap up?
Just after the first service, I had people come up to me and say, I have felt that way, and it's nice to know I'm not alone. You know, if I can touch one person and say, don't give up, you know, there's hope, then my 50 years will have been worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Can you guys say thank you to Miss Mary Lou?